stuff that's going to happen tonight. So, about 4 more minutes. Okay, hello everybody, and thank you so much for coming tonight. My name is Greg Williams. I work for the North Country Health Consortium, and I am a prevention specialist and continuum of care coordinator. And really appreciate every one of you coming down, listening to this. We have an interesting group of speakers that Chief Buteau has started a little group to work on the substance use disorder problem up here in Berlin. And we want to keep you up to date on what's going on, what's happening, be totally transparent about what we're doing and some of the progress we've made, and also have a group discussion at the end. So if you have any questions, just wait till the end, and we're going to go around. We left a bunch of time for people to ask questions. So we got a microphone we can pass around. But I want to thank White Mountains Community College. Thank you for hosting this. Emergency exits are out there and through there. Bathrooms are around the back here. We have water over here, and let's get started. So First up, I'd like to introduce Chief Dan Buto.
All right, well, thank you all for attending this evening. It's heartwarming to see this many people come out to this meeting on such an important issue. I've been chief of police now just since 2022. I took over from Pete Morency, who's here this evening. I've been with the department for approximately 24 years. And the goal, I think Greg already talked about the goal of this meeting, and that's to clearly state the problem that we're facing here in our area. And also to let you know what we've been doing behind the scenes with this group. I know there's a lot of folks working on these issues behind the scenes, but just to let you know what our group is doing. And yes, we want to give you a chance to ask some questions, because we don't have all the answers. And, so we're going to be looking for input from the public on this. This meeting was not designed to have all the resources here right now. We do plan on having a meeting in the future and invite all the various resources pertaining to prevention, treatment, and recovery, maybe in the September timeframe. But we're going to focus on what we've done up to this point here. My first year, 2022, as chief, was a really tough year. We had 11 overdose deaths here in the community. We had about 70 overdoses that we responded to. And for a small community like ours, that hit hard. And just think about that number for a second. 11 folks in Berlin lost their lives. It's shocking, really. And sometimes when we use those statistics, we kind of separate ourselves maybe from the full impact of that problem. But these numbers represent, as you know, sons, daughters, mothers, fathers, friends, brothers, sisters. And these numbers have names and faces. And it certainly was a heartbreaking year, and that's kind of what sparked we as a police department to reach out to some community partners to come to the table to say, what can we do different here? Help us, basically. Try to solve this problem, try to make an impact, because 11 lives were snuffed out way too early. And our department's been working very hard on the enforcement, with enforcement efforts. We are partnering with federal, state, county, local police agencies, law enforcement agencies to try to stem the tide of drugs coming into the community, to try to break that supply the best that we can. This is very challenging, and we remain steadfast in that effort. However, the overdose deaths continued, even though we've been pushing real hard on that front. And what I don't think we're making an impact is where we're hitting the supply side, but we really don't have the tools. How about the demand side? How do we address that? How do we address the demand, that life-taking demand? Law enforcement agencies, like I said, we're equipped mainly enforcement, supply side, get the drug dealers off the street, stop the flow coming into the community. But we don't have a lot of tools to deal with demand. I think we do as a community, and that's what we're hoping to get from this group. Time after time, I would see folks coming into the cell area at the police department coming down from a drug-induced high. We take folks in quite often, seeing the erratic behavior in the cell, coupled once they come down with remorse for some of the decisions that they were making. I can remember particularly this one young lady I seen just come in so many times. And it really just broke my heart, just seeing that same person over and over again in a downward spiral with no hope. And it sparked the call to action, I guess. And how can we stop this revolving door of people over and over coming in? Of course, I'm talking from a police department's perspective. How can we make an impact to break that vicious cycle. And, enforcement alone didn't seem to be making things better. Very important part of solving the problem, but it didn't seem where people are still dying. We're still responding to a number of overdoses. We've done the enforcement for years, but we have the same problem. I've seen the ebb and flow. Some years aren't as bad as others. Right now, there have been a few this year. Nothing like last year, but one death, of course, is way too many. But make no mistake, enforcement is absolutely vital in this process, and we'll continue to do that. But something more is needed. So that led us to the small group that we had together, that we got together last fall to look at the needs pertaining to prevention, treatment, and recovery. And we wanted to partner as a department with these folks. And shortly after we started, we talked about, what is the biggest need in this community right now? There's so many, right? There's so many needs. There's so much room for improvement. But what rises to the top of the list? And the decision that was made was a recovery center. And that's just one piece. And no doubt there'll be more work to do. And our great partners at the North Country Health Consortium had a contact with White Horse Recovery, brought them to the table. The group felt that maybe one of our functions is that we could vet the organization coming into the community and see if we could get behind them as a group. And we did that, and they really impressed us. They've been in other communities for a number of years. Littleton, Conway, Ossipee are the ones that I can think of right now. So that was a great start. The community group that we had right now, we're hoping it'll build from here, but is made of members of the police department, Berlin City Council, North Country Healthcare, Coos County Family Health, Laconia Police Department, and there are others that have come to the table, Department of Health and Human Services. And but you're going to actually hear from, pointing over here, but I think it's Jamie from White Horse, and he'll be discussing what a recovery center could look like if it comes to Berlin here. As a police department, we don't have all the answers to this problem. We know that we, as a department, need to make some changes in how we address this. We know that we need to educate ourselves. I need to educate myself about drug addiction and how it affects an individual, how it affects the family, and how it affects the community itself. We know that we need to partner with experts in that field, in the field of prevention, treatment, and recovery, along with folks that are in recovery right now. Fortunately, we received a grant recently to put an officer on the street that's going to deal specifically with this. It's called the PET officer. You've heard me say this many times: prevention, enforcement, and treatment. This officer will hopefully allow us to connect, will be our representative at the police department, to connect folks that we come across that are struggling with drug addiction to the resources that they need. We're in the process of hiring somebody right now. We have that funding until next year at this point. Now I think the area has come a long way with services coming into the community. So I don't want folks to think that there's nothing here. There's some of you that are involved in these services that are here tonight. And that's very encouraging. But with the numbers we had last year, we know we need to do more. There's more work to do. This is not solely a police department problem to solve. It's not a fire department problem to solve, not a hospital problem, not an individual problem. This is a problem that we need to face as a community. We need to bind ourselves together, team up, link our resources together. That's where I think we need to do some work. Make sure the right hand knows what the left hand is doing here towards eradicating this problem. We can improve here. If we get just one success story out of these efforts that we're making right now, it'll be worth the while, no doubt. However, even with one success, like a recovery center coming into town, we can't let our guard down. After that success, we should be asking, now what? What's the next step? Not just sit on our hands, but what's the next step? Because the problem is big and the solution's going to take some time. And this is maybe where we've erred in the past. Maybe we've kind of settled back. Things seem to slow down a little bit, and we might have focused on another issue. But I really believe that we need to keep this issue on the front burner. We need to be persistent with these efforts. We need to be determined to solve this, to make an impact, to prevent lives from being lost, lives from being ruined. This reminds me of a quote. I was recently out at a training that originates from somebody who knows much about persistence and determination. And it goes like this: success is not final. Failure is not fatal, but it's the courage to continue that counts. That's Winston Churchill. Just think about that for a minute. Success is not final. We need to keep on going. Even if we have one success, there's always work to do. There's always a problem to be solved. And this one's going to take some time. So if a recovery center, say we have that success, we can't stop there. We have to have, like we say in law enforcement, our head on a swivel, looking for the next step. Failure is not fatal. That's so important for an organization, for our efforts, that if for some reason things fall through, we're not going to stop while there's breath still in our lungs and a will to continue. We're going to keep moving in this direction. I think that's for folks in recovery. You know, failure is not fatal. While you still have breath, there's hope. And because you know what? It's the courage to continue that counts. That's basically all I have. I know we have a number of speakers here. May God bless each one of you, and may He help us with this effort to improve the quality of life in our community for all of our community members. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Chief. Next up, we have, we're lucky and fortunate to have ex-Chief Peter Morency, who is now a city councilman and has been a real integral part of this board. So,
Thank you all. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Peter Morency. I was a police officer here for 35 years, chief for 20. If you don't know me, I guess that's a good thing. Yeah, he knows me. For 10 years, I was also assigned and ran a drug unit for the Attorney General's Drug Task Force. And, I'm proud of the work that I did, but I also see that when I got out of that and went to a chief, that it wasn't fixing the problem. It was, we stopped the drugs from coming in, and kudos, there is a place for that, but it wasn't fixing the families. And I'd walk away and we'd charge and destroy the drugs, but we didn't fix the families. So as chief, we had the whole opioid epidemic hit, and I saw an opportunity that I felt strongly about, that we needed to go after the manufacturers and the distributors because they were part of the problem. And City Council gave me the go-ahead to go ahead and file the lawsuit against them. And since then, we've won, but there's always a but, a fraction of what we should be getting. By the time it was broken up and broken down, most of the money ends up where the population is, right? And I look at these DMI reports, which are drug monitoring initiatives, and I look at the counties, and Coos County is always in the top 3. Now, per capita, we shouldn't be. We really shouldn't be. But we're the highest in Narcan dispensing. We're the highest in emergency room visits. We're the highest in overdoses. And we're the lowest in treatment. But all I hear is Nashua and Manchester. That's all I hear. I know there's not a lot of votes here, but there are people here, there are families here. And we need the resources. So I applaud, and I think the chief kind of downplayed his role in putting a committee together. when he asked me to sit on this board, it was important to see what the next step was. Of course, in between, I decided instead of being paid to represent the public, that I would do it for free and become a councilman. But that was one of my campaign promises, was that I would continue fighting for the North Country and doing whatever I could for the addiction and the recovering community. So I thank the chief for allowing me to be there. And I have to tell you, I was surprised at the players that came to the table. I was amazed that, I know we've done little steps in the past, but this is real. This is real, people. We have players, we have things in place, we have Concord's ear, but we need to work together. And part of that is all of you. You know, I need to know what you need, what you've seen, what doesn't work, what we've done over, what we've overlapped in, and what hasn't worked. That's important moving forward. As a council person, you know, we fix that person, or we help that person. It's not just that person, it's their family, and that's our community. To make somebody healthy and make them a healthy part of our community is very important. Just a couple of things. I know I've got one council member here, Lucy. They've allowed me to speak on their behalf. And then the mayor could not be here. He gave me a call on the way over. He will be here at the next meeting. They allowed me to speak for them. And we are willing to do whatever we can to bring resources to Berlin and to the North Country and to get those provided to you. We're all on board with that, and I'm comfortable that they said that. I know the pain that it causes. You know, and I'll lay it out here now. I'm raising my 3 grandchildren, and I see the hurt and the pain every day. And if I could relieve that somehow, because I don't want them growing up in that. I don't want them. I want to give them an opportunity. I want to give them a chance. And if we can help that one person, in my case, it'll save 3. It'll say, and you know, 60-year-old raising a 3-year-old. Guess what? That's made for 20-year-olds. But it's important. It affects us all. It's not just the one person. It's not just the person in the cell. Their family, their loved ones. It's all of us. It's a community. So I thank you for being here tonight, and let's keep this going. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Chief mentioned they got a COSAP grant, and through that, we've been fortunate enough to bring up Detective Eric Adams from Laconia. He's kind of a superstar around the state a little bit, and yeah, he'll tell you, but yeah. But yeah, let's give him a round of applause.
Hey everyone, just want to start my, you got me? Okay. All right. Whew. I like to talk. Yeah, my name's Eric Adams. I'm not a superstar. I do put my pants on one leg at a time. The reason I'm here tonight, okay, is because I work for Laconia Police Department, and about 8-9 years ago, I started a program down in Laconia called the Prevention Enforcement Treatment Program. And so basically what that is it allows me to work with individuals that struggle with substance misuse and mental health on a direct basis, right, in a supportive role. So when you think of a cop, that's the last thing you would ever think of, in all honesty, right? When each one of us sign up, that whole cliche of sitting in front of the officers and you're doing your interview and you say, I want to help people, right? It's not a cliche, but it is. We all kind of laugh about it. But the reality is that is true, 100%. And some people don't really understand the commitment it takes to go out there every day and put your life on the line. And so when I started this program, I knew very little about addiction. I knew some about mental health. I will tell you, when I went to the police academy, I got a 4-hour training on bipolar and schizophrenia. And that was the extent of my training. Other than that, that was it. And I know that a lot of these officers here can say the same thing. And it's scary and it's sad, right? But the reality is, until the last probably 5 or 6 years, law enforcement really never dove into mental health. We never really dove into addiction. We just dove into the enforcement part, right? You broke the law, you had drugs, you get arrested. Keep it simple, right? But that's not life. That's not reality. And so, so my chief, Chief Matt Canfield, and the chief prior, Chris Adams, they gave me and afforded me the opportunity to take this program and kind of make it what I wanted to. And so one of the things I did was I actually went to college to become a LADAC. And so I finished most of the schooling, and I just basically have to get my hours and my supervision. But where I have so many years left in law enforcement, I kind of put that on hold. One of the things that I wanted to benefit out of that was just really being able to understand addiction, right? And so when it came to this program, I just wanted to make it something that was more of a supportive role, and that I knew that going into this, I didn't think that someone would sit down and talk with me about addiction, about drug use. And so, so I kind of just wung it, to be honest with you. I remember when I first got called by one of our patrol officers to go up to an overdose that happened. I go up, I'm sitting at the hospital, and I'm looking at this person who I knew. I fortunately had not arrested them, but I knew them. And so I wasn't in uniform. I actually went up in shorts and a t-shirt. And the ER staff was looking at me kind of weird. But when I sat down, I just made this connection. And I just started talking. And then it was not even anything to do with law enforcement. It was, holy crap, you almost died. And then I just sat there for a minute. And they looked at me and they're like, why aren't you wearing uniform? And I just said, I didn't think I needed to be. And I just sat there and I talked with that kid for close to 2 hours. And I'll tell you, it was the greatest feeling that I'd probably had in my entire law enforcement career. And I knew right then and there that I needed to learn more. And so, so I ended up really diving into it in a lot of ways. And I learned from some amazing individuals in our community. And one thing that I learned as I went along in it was nobody was talking to each other. So you had treatment providers, you had mental health providers, you had AA meetings, you had some MET programs, not much when I started, but they weren't talking to each other. And so when I started asking if I could attend one of their meetings or if I could sit down with them and chat with them, it really started to kind of bring people together. I started referring people left and right. And once I started to build what they call street cred, and some people in recovery, like Eric's giggling, he knows, right? That meant I was the shiznit, right? I was the one that people would want to come talk to. Why? And why did they want to talk to me? Because I wasn't putting bracelets on them. Because, and not because I wasn't a cop, but because I was helping them through alternatives, right? So the program that we created was this law enforcement diversion type program. And so I started getting the buy-in from the other officers. And then I started getting buy-in from the surrounding PDs. And so it kind of just built and built and built. And I don't want to bore you with all the details, but the reality of it is that I'm now in charge of a $4 million grant for this state to implement this program in several communities. And one of those communities is here. And so I'm going to work with the Berlin Police Department to make this program a success. All right. I can tell you that, like Councilman Morency, I did quite a long stint in the AG's drug task force. I worked undercover a lot. And this happened to be one of my areas for quite a long time. So I can tell you that I know the area pretty well. But one thing that I think was important while I worked in there, and it really kind of sunk with me, was I didn't care at the time whether you were dealing because you were trying to feed your addiction or you were doing it to just make money. I didn't care at the time. And there was no division in my head. It was all one thing. And that sounds kind of cold, and it was. But you have to remember that law enforcement didn't have this type of information or training, right? We didn't really understand the differences. And so as I went along in my career, I really started to understand that somebody that is dealing because they are struggling with their addiction and they're feeding their addiction because of it, they need help. It's that simple. And if you take those individuals that are struggling and that are feeding their addiction and you bring them and help them and walk them into recovery, that's less drugs on the street, period. It's that simple, but it's not, right? And so there's a lot that goes into it. But I'll tell you that I wouldn't be sitting here if I didn't see the successes in it. So I want you to know how much time I got left. 10 minutes? 5 minutes? All right. So 10 minutes. So I just want you to know that in the work that we're going to do, okay, it's really going to be from many different angles, right? One, it's bringing partners to the table. Two, it's having the police department, all of the officers, not just one, but all the officers get additional training in things like stigma reduction, in words matter, right? We know, right? Those are all important factors. And I'll tell you, when we started doing those implementations down in Laconia, it helped. It truly helped. And a lot of cops, right? Type A personalities. But I'll tell you, some of the biggest turnarounds were from some of the most rough seasoned officers. And it was because they saw the change in individuals that they had been dealing with on a generational basis. Right? They saw that change. It just takes time. And the one thing that I found interesting up here is, and I've had conversations with the chief about this, is the fact that the North Country is kind of like the forgotten, right? Well, it's not going to be. So, because I'm going to tell you, we are going to make sure that the resources are here and that it's not forgotten. There's going to be some other great speakers up here, but I want you to know that I'll be sticking around after. So if you want more details about some of the things that the PD is going to do in reference to the COSUP grant, I'm more than willing to chat with you about it. And I can have more of a one-on-one type conversation. But I can tell you the work that we've done in Laconia, it's going to be very similar to what we do up here. But knowing that the two communities are different, right? So we got to conform it to your community, and it's got to be led by your community, right? That's the most important thing. I know there was some hiccups here that happened with a recovery center and whatnot, but you know what? The reality is this is a new day, right? And I think what you're seeing now is you're going to see a much stronger collaboration and a lot more people that have a good direction and that are going to actually ask the people in this community what you want. That's the most important thing. So please feel free to contact Berlin PD or myself. I'll make sure that everybody here, if you want my contact information, I'm more than willing to give it to you. I'll be up here on a regular basis, so I'll probably see some of you. So thank you.
I told you he's a superstar, right on time, too. Perfect, perfect. So next, Mia Qualls works for Coos County Family Health Services, right? And she's brought a couple of people in recovery that are going to come up and speak. So I want to bring up Carrie and Crystal. They're going to come up together. Crystal and Carrie.
All right, my name's Carrie Demers, aka Bubba. Most people know me by Carrie Demers or Bubba. My addiction, I was born and raised here. I grew up here all my life. I always worked. I was a functioning addict. You know, I struggled in my high school years because I was gay and it wasn't accepted in 1996. You know, hey, you're gay, stay away, you know. So I started drinking, doing drugs to make me feel, you know, like I'm more at ease with people to fit in. So my addiction got worse throughout the years. In 2000 is when my addiction hit pretty bad. I started doing Oxycontin. I'll never forget the feeling. I did that one pill. It went right through me. Like, I fell in love. That was my first love, I think. Honestly, it was Oxycontin. From 2000 to 2010. Well, 2010, I started dealing. Selling my pills, and I was getting shot from doctors. You know, I was selling everybody shit. Just, you know, to support my habit. You know, I wasn't a drug dealer bringing in all kinds of stuff. I was just trying to stay high. Well, 2019, it was around November 2019, I get a phone call. Gary, did you read the paper today? No? Oh, you're in it. I'm like, what? Got indicted on 3 charges, sales of controlled substance. Well, I begged, and I begged, begged, district attorney, hey, can I get drug court? Can I go to rehab? back then, they weren't looking at that. And I was trying to support my habit. They didn't want to hear it. So I got sentenced 1.5 to 3 to prison. Well, I wasn't ready to get clean then. So what did I do? Got in a big fight over drugs in prison. Got another 1.5 to 3 on top of my 1.5 to 3. So lo and behold, here I am doing time. Well, you know, I got put in the hole, you guys, 10 months. Mind you, you get out 1 hour a day. So first 3 months, all I had was a Bible, you know. I'm there, looking at it, I'm there, you know what, fuck this, I said. I'm done, I'm there. I'm never gonna change. You know, my family don't want me, nobody wants me. I'm there, I gotta do something to change this, right? You know, I just sat there, I started writing journals. So I finally get out of the hole 10 months later. And then they see, you know, I get through the boards and all like that. I finally get to the halfway house. All right, messed up the halfway house. Got a 60-day setback there because drugs again. So I'm there. This is it. I'm there. I'm done. This is gonna be my life for the rest of my life. You know, I'm there. What the hell am I gonna do with myself? I'm there. I can't go back to Berlin. No way in hell. You know, I'm there. I'm gonna end up dying up there. Well, from the halfway house, I went to transitional living. Families in transition because there's no sober houses up here. There's no recovery centers, nothing up here in Berlin. Because I wanted to get back here to be in my hometown, so where my support system is. No, so I went down there, which best thing ever, you guys. I did MRT, I did IOP, PHP. Like, I did all the recoveries. Like, I could teach class, you know. You know, anybody could teach class, you know, but you have to, one, have your recovery, guys, you know. You know, I am someone's daughter, someone's sister, you know, and I was right there. I mean, I partied with some of your kids. Actually, I probably partied with some of you, too, you know. Like, it's just, recovery works, but you have to want it. I'm telling you right now, family helps. It's done a lot for me. Before prison, I looked at me, fuck you guys, I don't need you guys. I went off and I got high. I called her from transition living. I'm there. I come back home. All right, when are you going to be here? She says, I'll set you an appointment. Welcome me back, and thank God for family help, you guys. Thank you very much.
My story is a lot different. I never went to jail. I was raised by a police officer in Berlin. I graduated in 2000. I partied in high school, just a little bit of drinking, didn't know much about addiction, but I always knew my dad drank every weekend, and I was scared to be in the car with him. So drinking wasn't my thing. I went to beauty school in Laconia. I didn't care for Laconia too much. So I ended up moving to Newington. I did hair there, and well, hairdressers worked some pretty crazy hours. And boy, we like to have fun in our 20s, so we would go out. I met my ex-husband, and I didn't know what a drug addict was until I met him. I got pregnant right away, unfortunately. And when my daughter was 6 months, he fell off a roof. He was getting bottles of Percocets that were sent straight to the pharmacy. We were getting them just thrown to him. I tried one, and I loved it. I have mental health. I've always struggled with mental health. I was suicidal as a kid throughout all junior high, high school. I was a cutter. But nobody talked about what mental health was back then. But those drugs made me feel better. And when I ran out that first time, it's a sickness nobody knows. You have to feel that sickness. I didn't want to be a drug addict. She didn't want to be a drug addict. I had a kid. She was 6 months old when I became addicted. I met her sober when she was 11. That's something, I have goosebumps. 11 years old. She met her mother sober. Think of that. I was a functioning addict. My parents didn't know. Nobody knew. Until the day that I lost everything. I was living in my best friend's basement at this point with my daughter. My best friend told me I had two choices. I needed to go live in my car because she could no longer watch me kill myself, but she was keeping my daughter. Or I could go get treatment. Well, treatment it was. Treatment is not easy for us up here. I had to do bed checks. I had to call rehabs every morning to see if there was a bed available. I was fortunate because I did know some good people. I knew the director of the Friendship House. She was able to make some calls, and 9 days later, I was in rehab, 3 hours away in Dublin. No phone, no connections, scared, living with people, learning things. I learned a lot about alcoholism and how bad that is for our health too. And that's legal. You can go just buy booze anywhere. So on top of the drugs and the booze, and we have nothing up here. We need help up here. People don't need 9 days to get in treatment. Those 9 days, they could die. Okay? When you're so low, you don't care if you live or die. So you need the support system here for people because they're mothers and fathers and daughters and sons. I'm celebrating 8 years in recovery this October. I don't know what I would do without the MAT program at COAS. It saved my life. I'm human. I have weak moments. But I do know I don't want that life again. But that doesn't mean I don't go to weekly meetings. I need to work my program still. When you're an addict, you're forever an addict. And it just takes one slip up. I just found out a kid died. Well, a kid, he's my age. He died, yeah. And it's because he just left rehab. And he used that one time and he's gone now. There's too many people gone. And our town deserves this. Our people deserve it. We are all humans. Nobody is stealing because they want to. They just are stealing because their brain got hijacked from the chemicals of the drugs. So I am 100% involved in whatever. I am all in. I want this as much as you guys do, and I will work hand in hand with any fee. So I just thank you.
Thank you both so much for sharing that. Powerful. As a lot of you could tell, I'm old and I've seen a lot. And one of the, yeah, it's a little, okay. A little tough to follow that. But I started working at the consortium 6 or 7 years ago. And what I saw in Littleton was a transformation of that town go from the police chief changing his mindset and wanting change and knowing that he can't keep doing the same thing. He changed, his force changed. And there was so much communication between treatment, the police, and so many people that there is a thriving recovery community in Littleton that is just unbelievable. The people celebrate recovery like it's their group. They're so proud of it. And one of the people I've been fortunate enough to work hand in hand with is a real huge component of that Jamie D'Alessandro. So I want to bring him up here, and he'll talk to you more about that.
So I just want to start with saying how incredibly grateful I am to be here. Been nervous all day about speaking to you guys, and interestingly enough, those that know me know that I speak like this on a regular basis in all different places. But this is so incredibly important that I've been just racked with nerves making sure that I hammer home how important this truly is. So to start, as Greg said, my name is Jamie D'Alessandro. I am the RCO co-director for Whitehorse. I am also the regional manager for White Mountains Recovery Homes. How did I get there? Easy. I went to school for over 30 years, from the time that I was young, growing up in a home with mental health undiagnosed and addiction, to the time I became an addict myself, okay? My clean date is August 3rd, 2017. I will be 6 years clean in a couple weeks. As it was mentioned already, you know, addicts that are dealing to support their habit need help. That is absolutely true. I was one of those people, and I didn't do it to make money. I wasn't rolling around in a Lincoln Navigator and a giant house. I was dope sick on a regular basis, trying to find my next fix. And how did I do that? Scrounging up enough out of my personal supply to sell to somebody else so I could go back and re-up down south, right? Well, it all came to a head on that day in August. I was down south picking up in Plastow area, Rockingham County, and the driver of the car ended up in this town called Atkinson, which, if you don't know southern New Hampshire, you go from Plastow, which is similar to up here in regards to what you're looking at, and then you end up in Atkinson, where every house is $1 million home. And we were in a busted Honda Civic with no inspection sticker. We stuck out. So as I'm doing my thing in the back seat, next thing you know, folks like this are right behind me, right? And you would think that in that moment, I was upset. In fact, I said, thank God it's finally over. You know, clearly the police officer didn't believe we were just passing through, as I'm from the Lakes region. I was about 2 hours away from home. And, you know, I ended up going to jail. I went to Rockingham County Jail. And while I was in there, I started attending NA meetings and I started going to church, right? I started embracing the fact that enough was enough, right? And what happened that truly hammered home that I needed to change my life? In October of 2017, I called home to speak to my mother, and she was crying. Ma, what's going on? My father had passed away. Now, my father was a retired police officer, but he was also a Vietnam veteran that suffered injuries throughout his careers and was addicted to narcotic pain medication. And as it got further on into life and I became an addict, we ended up doing heroin together. I've done drugs with both my mother and my father. And when I went to jail, the supply ended, and my father had a brain aneurysm due to stress caused by complications of withdrawal. I cried all night in my cell that night. You know, anytime I was running from the police, and, you know, I've been on the receiving end of guns and lights and raided and all that stuff. Anytime I was running from them, probation or parole, I needed money. My dad always bailed me out. But when I found out that news that he was gone, I realized I had to put my big boy pants on, because there was no one that's gonna bail me out anymore. I originally tried to go to the Salvation Army program in Worcester to get out of New Hampshire and try and fresh start down there, but I had warrants out of Grafton County for skipping out on probation. So they wrapped up my charges in Rockingham County, and I pled into something called the FIRM program out of Grafton County, where I'm pretty certain she is a Berlin native, was in charge of my schooling in there in that program, Lucille Buteau, who I absolutely adore. She hated me in there, but we get along really good now. And I pled into that program. And what that means is I did 100 days inside the jail, going to drug treatment classes, and then I'd have the weekends off in the unit. And then you graduate to the next level of the program, which is getting out on an electronic monitor where I had to submit very strict scheduling, so on and so forth. You have to stay in the county. I had no idea where I was going to go. I definitely didn't want to go back to Plymouth or Ashland area where I grew up. I didn't want to walk around that early in my recovery, running into the people that I know, so on and so forth. Well, I had been to Friendship House at one point, and Lucille asked me, she said, hey, there's a guy who just opened up a sober house in Littleton. I'm like, Littleton? Nobody goes north of the Notch where I'm from, you know what I mean? So, and I called this guy, and I hear this ridiculous Boston accent on the phone. And I'm like, I know this guy, right? He used to be a clinician at Friendship House, and his name's Keith Anderson. And he's like, yeah, you know, we got this house and so on and so forth. So long story short, on March 5th, 2018, I paroled out and I went to White Mountains Recovery Homes, okay? I got a get well job working for a local member of the church, working for his construction company. I was so grateful not to be incarcerated and not to be running from folks like you, that $10 an hour to grind dump truck bodies and breathe in all that crap and paint it afterwards, I was stoked. All right. Well, one of my housemates came home one day and he goes, hey, drug court's making me go to this place called the Serenity Center. And I'm like, okay, great. He's like, you should come with me. So I go down there. At the time, it was on Main Street in Littleton, right next to Chudder's, which we ended up moving because Chudder's didn't like 30 addicts on Main Street ripping butts after a meeting. But that's where we got the start, right? So I went into that center, and there was an all recovery meeting happening, right? And there was a few folks, some of them here, involved in that. And another long story short, by June of 2018, I was employed with the Serenity Center, and I was going for my recovery coach certification, so on and so forth. I ended up working at the Tyler Blaine House in Lancaster so I could understand homelessness and get case management under my belt. I eventually cleaned that place up, and then Eric Becker and Christy Latender, they came in and took over that. And then I stepped away because that's not where my passion was, right? My passion is substance use disorder and reentry from incarceration. So I wrote on here I was going to be short on my story, but
We've got time.
okay.
Just gotta be short.
Okay. Where has this all grown to? Well, in Littleton, White Mountains Recovery Homes has grown to 7 houses. And we also have one in Plymouth, so 8 total. The Serenity Center has moved to a much bigger location. And I'm going to say this because it's very important to me. God is a huge part of my story and a huge part of my life, okay? You want to talk about a God shot, right? So Serenity Center, just like Tyler Blaine, had some things going on that probably shouldn't have been going on. And I built a team in that center, and once that team was able to sustain, and I knew it, I blew the whistle, so to speak, on some of those things, right? And we got that handled. The center survived and thrived and continued to help people even without anyone directly overseeing us, other than Eric Becker, who was on our board, but he was so busy with Tyler Blaine and everything else, he was rarely there. So I was in charge of all of that. But we don't look at it that way in our center. We're a family and we're a team, and we help people. Now, there was a lot of talk about who was going to merge with us and this and that, right? Now, I've worked closely with the Family Resource Center. We've collaborated and taught parenting classes and love the folks over there. In fact, one of the former Serenity Center employees is still with them, I believe. But what they do is a little bit different than what we do. So it just didn't look right. It didn't make a good marriage, so to speak, right? Now, I mentioned when I started there, I had taken the Recovery Coach Academy. Well, lo and behold, there's this gentleman named Eric Moran, who sits in front right here, who is the other RCO director of Whitehorse. He taught my academy, and as it turns out, they were the suitors that came in and merged. So someone who was intricate in my story in the very beginning is now my boss, and we're together and we're working for a common goal. Whitehorse has 3 centers, soon to be 4. We have the Shed in Ossipee, we have Shed North in North Conway, and we have the Shed at Serenity Center, and soon to be Shed something in Berlin. We're working on it. That is definite. We have gotten confirmation today. We are just waiting to sign the lease, and we will be here and, God willing, operational by October. So what does that look like? Well, one, I want to say that if it wasn't for recovery centers, coaches, recovery housing, these types of resources, I have no idea if I would have ever gotten clean. Chances are Lucille and Sergeant Dean would have violated me. I would have ended up in prison because I wouldn't have known what to do. But because of these resources, I was able to thrive and finally change my life. So what does a recovery center offer? We offer one-on-one recovery coaching. We build recovery and wellness plans with those participants that come in. Person-centered. So what's the goal? We want individuals coming into these centers to be able to start standing up for themselves, and we advocate with them and show them the way, but we let them make the decisions on their own so they can become normal members of society. We are help with resource. I like to say we're resource brokers, right? So primary care, DHHS with regards to Medicaid and food stamps and all of these types of things, right? Mental health. Blue Heron is in Gorham. I work with them. I'm sure there's some others around here I'm not familiar with, but I work with them directly. We help get these folks plugged into those things, because living clean is not just putting down the drink and the drug. It's living clean in every aspect of your life. You need to get your physical and your mental health squared away, and that is absolutely imperative. Referrals, we help with that as well. We offer multiple pathways to recovery. Now, I'm going to tell you, I am faith-based, I love God, and I'm a 12-stepper, right? But that might not be Greg's path, right? That might not be Eric's path. They might have other things that they're interested in, whether it's the 3 principles, which is something that was huge out of the Farnham Center, all recovery, 8 dimensions, so on and so forth, right? We welcome all of that. We welcome all people, gay or straight, right? Family supports. I know that in my addiction, I left a wake behind me that destroyed my family on many levels and many other people, right? Sometimes family just doesn't understand why we do the things that we do, and that's understandable and that's okay. We have meetings and groups for those folks to try and better understand their family members that are in the grips of addiction, so that way they can be taken care of as well, because everybody matters in our communities. Life skills, absolutely imperative. I'll tell you right now, some of the folks that live in my recovery homes, when you tell them to do dishes, they look at you like they have 6 heads, okay? Community outreach, absolutely my favorite thing to do, right? So I'm here, obviously I do things like this, I go to New Hampshire Detox and I speak. I go to the Granite House in Derry and I speak. I go to Valley Vista. I go to all of these different rehabs and I push what's going on in the North Country, because in every other part of the country, there is a drug epidemic, but in the North Country, we have a recovery epidemic. And it's about damn time it spreads to Berlin and Colebrook. I am very closely connected to both federal and state probation and parole. I am very much connected to all of the jails. I was just up here in Berlin recently picking up an inmate from the prison. I wish their release time was a lot faster, but I was sitting behind the prison for 6 hours waiting on that to happen. But very much connected, right? We cannot do this alone. We have to do this as a team. What else does the center offer? We offer prevention. I love going to Littleton High School when they have health class and they're talking about addiction, and we get in there and we explain the reality of the situation. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm a DARE guy. I'm not in that age bracket. I don't know if DARE is even a thing anymore, but you know, just say no. Great. Why? What is withdrawal? What does it look like to be addicted to these substances? I wish I had known. I started my addiction because I'm actually a former Berlin resident. My hardcore addiction to opiates started right here in Berlin. This place is special to me. I've lived on Main Street, right next to Internal Machines, which I don't think is a thing anymore. And I lived on Champlain Street on the east side. When the mill closed down, me and my former wife, my ex-wife, we decided to bring some clothes to donate to the folks that were in need. She was coming down a hill, and we don't know the way around here very well. Sun hit her in the eyes. She went right through a stop sign, full-size Chevy, hit me in the door. I broke my back in 3 places. Ended up over at the hospital, and that's when I first started getting prescribed legally. Berlin's very special in my heart. Narcan training and Narcan distribution is another thing that the center offers. Oh, thank you. One thing I will say is every community is different, and every community needs to be tailored based on what's going on in their community. Do we have a great model in Littleton? We do. Is that going to work specifically for Berlin? Probably not. But do we have an idea of what to do? We absolutely do. Just like Ossipee and North Conway are different as well. One of the most important things in Littleton is our connection to the local police department. Now, I'm a 4-time felon. And if you had told me 6, 7 years ago that I would be talking to police officers on a regular basis as if they were my friends or family, because that's what I consider a lot of these folks down there, I would tell you you were crazy. Chief Paul Smith, Detective Scott Powers, Officer Andrew Eastman, Officer Chris Wilkins, Officer Dave Wentworth, who was my nemesis in the gym, by the way. But he gives me respect now, which, coming from a former junkie, to be able to lift almost as much as him, pretty cool. I'm also quite a bit older than he is too, so just so you know. All of these folks are special to me. I have their cell phones. They respect me. Officer James Hamill's another one. I could go on and on, right? I've also been a part of the family member experiencing addiction, okay? My soon-to-be wife, I'm getting married in spring. Her family is Native American, and her brother Danny moved up to Kahnawake in Montreal to learn the Mohawk way of life, right? Up there, he developed a drug habit. with everything that both me and my wife do in recovery world, he called us one day and he said, "Hey, Jamie, can I come down and live with you guys and get myself together?" And I said, "Yes, absolutely." One night, I went down into my basement where he lived. I have it finished and whatnot. And I was doing some laundry. Danny said he's showing me some meme or something, whatever. It was, not very important, but we laughed. And then I got a call. I had to leave to go deal with something at my women's location for the recovery housing. I didn't get back till 2 a.m. and I went by and I saw through the cat door. Yeah, my wife has 3 cats. I hate cats. Whatever. I saw the light was still on and I didn't think anything of it. I figured he was playing video games, what have you. The next day I went to church. While I was there, I get a phone call from my wife, absolutely hysterical. "Danny's dead." I rushed home. He overdosed that night right after I left and died in my basement. I know what it's like from every single angle. The reason why I am as good as what I do today is because I have lived just about anything you could possibly think of and walked in that path and came out on the other side by the grace of God. So when somebody walks into a recovery center and gets to speak with me or one of these 2 amazing people, for example, and that individual can sit across from the other person and say, "I understand. Let's do something about this," and connect with them with empathy on a legitimate level that isn't just lip service. Folks that are book read have a place in this field. I've worked with many, but it hits differently when the person you're getting services from knows exactly what it is you've been through. I've had 2 of my children taken away because my opiate addiction developed into a serious, vicious meth habit. Methamphetamine is going to take over the opioid epidemic and kill many, many people. And as these folks can attest to this, dealing with an individual on meth, talk about sporadic and dangerous. When I was on opiates and heroin, I still was a functioning addict. I worked and I kept some normalcy in my life. When I started on the meth train, I lost my soul and nothing mattered to me, not even my own children. I have allegedly kicked in doors and hurt people. I have robbed other drug dealers and many other things that were violent and put myself and other people in harm's way. There's a lot of people like that in your community right now that need a way out. Because I can assure you the person I was in active addiction is not the man standing in front of you today. But if there wasn't somebody that was there back when I needed help, that believed in me and gave me those opportunities, had the resources available to me, I don't know if I'd even be alive today. Probably not. I'll be up here on Monday at a celebration of life for a Berlin native who was my sponsee in the 12-step fellowship. This man was a good person. I spoke at his drug court graduation in May. He was getting ready to leave recovery housing into his own apartment. And he decided to use one more time. Please pray for Andrew Small's family. They need it. I am sick to death of getting that type of news. The family members are sick to death of getting that type of news and feeling that pain. We need to start doing something about it, and this is the first step. The collaboration with the recovery centers, mental health, law enforcement, all of these things are imperative because we need to hit it from every angle. What does it look like in the future if this goes? Well, we're going to start saving lives. The community is going to start to thrive. when we say we're North Country strong, people are going to really believe that. It's not just going to be one piece of the North Country, it's going to be the whole thing, right? People literally beg to come to Littleton to recover. I want Berlin to be just like that as well, you know? But we need to start with the folks that actually live here that have no idea what to do. Recovery housing could be something in the future. That's another piece to this puzzle. Who knows? But what I do know is that when we do get this up and running, we are going to make a dramatic impact, and I am so grateful to be a part of it. And thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Even though you went over, it was more than worth it. I just want to point out a couple of people like Cheryl Pacapelli, who just stood up. There she is. She came up from down south. She's with Harbor Homes, or Harbor Care. It was a very big part of the recovery, this recovery center coming up here, along with Eric Moran from Whitehorse. So thank them for making this happen. It's a community effort, and they're a big part of it. So I don't want them to go unrecognized. So that's kind of it for the speakers, but we want to open up if anybody has any questions. We have a microphone. I'll walk around, and if anybody wants to speak, raise your hand and I'll come and give you the microphone and you can take the floor. Anybody? All right, let's go home. No. I mean, if anybody has anything they want to share, Ed, by all means, now's the time.
Start
Okay,
with
thank you. Can everybody get here?
okay. People probably know who I am. I'm in this community, in the Berlin community. What I heard tonight through the Berlin Police Department, Whitehorse, all partners, the recovery, people that have been through the addiction. I have a family member that struggles with addiction. I'm on that side with Peter. Thank you for sharing your very personal family story. I want to be part of the initiative, and I see that this is going to come to fruition because I think we have a commitment. And it's great to see these many people here, even a little infant, an animal. I mean, we have all of the energy to make this a go, and it is needed. I don't want to be that parent that says, I lost a child, a son. And that's a real reality for me and my family. And that's my truth. So that's all I have to say for today. I appreciate this is the right direction. Kudos to all involved. North Country, sort of, I can go on, all the partners.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, this is going to happen. It's important, it's necessary, and it is going to happen. Gentlemen over here.
I really appreciate you gentlemen, what you had to say. I live in Berlin. I was drunk for a long, long time. Sober and clean for 44 years. I didn't go to treatment. I topped it out. It was hard. But one thing I did do right, I went to Alcoholics Anonymous. I went to meetings after meetings after meetings after meetings. That was my recovery then, and that's still my recovery to this day. One drunk helping another drunk, one addict helping another addict. That's the way it worked many, many years ago. That's the way it still works today. The thing is, and you know this, about an addict or a drunk, you gotta want it. If you don't want it, it's not gonna work. I've talked to, and I've lost a lot of friends through the years because they chose to go back out. They thought they were okay. I got one more drunk. I can get one more high. And they're dead. I don't know how many people, right here in Berlin, I don't know how many people I've seen come in the program and choose to go back out, simply because they don't give themselves enough time mentally to heal. Physically, I bounced back pretty good, but mentally, I was 5 years. Up here, my hometown was Laconia. Born and brought up on the Wheeler Boulevard. My parents had a couple of hotels down here. I had a good home. My parents weren't drunks and weren't druggies. The thing I hated the most, I turned into me. You mentioned Native American. My father was full-blooded pre-Indian out of northern Quebec. I used to go up there when I was a kid. The alcoholism and still popping pills as well. They used to drink what they call, it was, oh God, many years ago. They mixed it with Lysol and they drank it. The thing I hated the most, I hated that. I hated booze. And what I hated the most, I turned into B. It's incredible how that works, you know? And I hope this recovery center that you guys want to get going, I hope it works. I really do. I don't know how that's gonna work. I don't know what your plans are. But I mean, with me, it was going to meetings. That's how I got sober and got straight. And I went to meetings after, like I said, meetings after meetings, okay? And it works. But it only worked when I wanted it to work. Thank you very much, all of you.
Anybody else? Okay. I know you. I was going to say hi, very well. Give the baby some time. Yeah.
Hi, Sandra. And I just wanted to share briefly, I know Jamie, I think it's awesome you're coming up here to Berlin. I've been secretly praying for this day since 2016 when I moved here, because when I moved here, I had been to various recovery centers, treatment centers, sober living homes across the country. I'm in recovery as well. And when I moved back here, I felt extremely lost because there is nothing here for someone like me, in my opinion, who is active in their recovery and who is, you know, at the time, in 2016, and I wasn't on MAT, and there wasn't as many therapy offices as they've grown. The parents now in the community, and I think Coas didn't have an MAT program at the time, and so when I moved up here, it was very, very bare minimum as far as what was offered, and I found that the longer I stayed here, the sicker I got, and so I ended up kind of having to go and isolate myself in my house, be alone completely, because I couldn't depend on anybody in the community because there was nobody in recovery at the time, and was doing meetings online from my home, scared to leave my home because I didn't want to go back out because I didn't want to end up dead. And so, you know, having something like this in the community, and I can say, just speaking from my own personal experience, if I would have had to have gotten sober in this community, I don't think I would have made it. I did not.
Get sober here either.
I didn't get sober here. I spent several years away from this community and several years away from my, at the time, 15-month-old son, who, when I came back, was 6 because I couldn't handle being in this community and trying to get sober. It just wasn't working. So I get chills when I think of the people who have to white knuckle it here and have to, and don't make it and don't get their kids back and don't have a successful life. I see them walking on the streets all the time and it breaks my heart. So anything that I can do in the community to help, I do plan on getting your phone number just for, I work for Blue Heron, and so I think that the clinical director will be interested to have your phone number, just to communicate, and anything that I can do to be involved. Obviously, Jamie, you know how to reach me on Facebook, and I'm all for it and all in. So, thank you.
Eric Moran from White Horse Recovery.
All right, I wasn't gonna say anything, but now I can't help it. The Recovery Community Organization, right? So we call it the Shed because it's a place you can shed your life, but it is an RCO, Recovery Community Organization, right? And the reason they're all different is because the recovery community comes in, takes ownership of it. That's where we get the extra NA meetings, the extra AA meetings. I mean, this is your center. What are the hours gonna be? Well, I can promise I'll staff it 9 to 5, but you know what? If there's enough active volunteers in healthy recovery, it can be open till midnight. I don't care, it's your center. We might have our name on it, but the more you own it, the better it will be. Then in comes recovery community workforce, right? If we wanna help people get healthy, there's programs out there to get employers involved so we can get people jobs so that they can start paying their rent, support their family, pay their child support, and you see how this just goes on and on and on, it gets better and better and better. So with that, I'm gonna leave it, but thank you very much.
So I had a question for the recovery company. For those of us that have family members that aren't in recovery like we are, I'm a member of recovery as well. Is there going to be like Al-Anon resources in that would be there for our families that can also gain recovery? Because those of us that know our thinking, it spreads into our families. So when we get recovery, if we bring our loved one in with us, you know, they recover as well. But those things are kind of really big too, because that's kind of what I've been seeing too, is that a lot of the families, they have people that are getting into recovery, their loved ones, but they don't know nothing about it, and it's kind of like, okay, do your thing, and, you know.
Did
I'm
you
just
just
kinda
volunteer to
curious.
start an Al-Anon meeting? Because the answer will be yes.
I have to ask the boss.
It only takes 2 people to make a meeting, and just like Eric said, it's gonna be person-centered. So if there's a need if there's a want and an ability to have that meeting, it's gonna happen. We'll put it right on the schedule.
Awesome. That sounds great.
Thank you. We have Cheryl Pacapelli, I mentioned before, she's here, she's going to speak. And I don't think anybody else drove 2 hours and 15 minutes to be here, but she did.
So hi, everybody. I'm just going to go up front so I can not see the back of your heads. And this is Nugget. He couldn't work a 12-hour day out of the house. No, so I want to say it's amazing, amazing, amazing to see how many people are here. Okay, so I go to these a lot because that's my job. So just a couple of things. I'm from Harbor Care. I'm also a person in long-term recovery for 34 years, but my friend over there has 40. And I've been working in peer recovery support and recovery community centers since 2001. So this is, and I used to own recovery houses. So this is my passion, right? I know it works. I've seen it work through everything that has happened in New Hampshire. So just a little bit about Harbor Care and what we do, right, for this. We are the funder through DHHS at the state that oversees all the subcontracts for the 21 recovery community centers. And what I can tell you today, at like 3:30, maybe 2:30, I got the email that said it was official, that the funding was available for Berlin. So that funding starts October 1st. Eric has already asked, is there any other funding you can give us?
I'm in a rush.
You know, you gotta ask. So we'll go back and we'll look at that. So, but what Harbor Care does, like White Horse is established now, but when we started this in 2015, there were 0 recovery community centers in New Hampshire, and now we have 21. Okay, so what Harbor Care does is we do all the back-end support, right? We help, when this started, people were dying throughout the state, and people in recovery wanted to do something to help, but they didn't have any money. They weren't a 501c3 yet. They didn't even have a pencil, right? And so Harbor Care got the contract and we provided the pencils, right? And we provided the training to build the infrastructure that we have today. And now, when I heard about this Berlin, the first thing I thought of was, we gotta talk to White Horse, right? Because White Horse and Jamie, you know, and this, right, we've been through a few things. And, but that's what we do. So if you have an HR problem, you don't have an HR department because you only have 4 employees, you call Harbor Care. We have an HR department. We help with that. You have a problem with the board, you call us, we work with you. You need to build Medicaid, we credential your people for you. You need trainings, we provide any kind of TA, organizational coaching. So I have a staff of 9 people that help support all these recovery centers. So it's not gonna be just them, right? We're gonna be able to help them. The recovery center that was up here before wasn't part of this network and infrastructure, so they struggled a little. So I just wanna let people know, like, that's not gonna happen this time. Like, the amount of community support that I've seen coming up to the few meetings that I've come to has been amazing. And I will tell you, I will be here until winter. And I will be back in the spring, right? Because I do not go north of the Notch after November 25th. All right? So I'm really happy to see all of this and excited.
Anybody else? Anybody else like to speak? I think we covered a lot. I think this was amazing. I appreciate every single one of you. I just want to bring it back to thanking Chief Dan Buto for starting all of this. Without his initiative of, you know, bringing people together to start this, this wouldn't happen. And I really do applaud him. So let's thank you all. Stay home safe, and I appreciate you all being here. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Mind if I speak for a second? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. One more speaker. All right.
Good evening, everyone. My name is John Seabury. I moved up to Berlin 13 years ago. I love the area. Unfortunately, some of the issues tend to follow John Seabury wherever he goes. I live up on Spring Street, and one of my neighbors passed away, and we ended up with a lot of squatters in the house, and it turned into a 2.5-year nightmare. My wife's a 30-year BSNRN detox nurse, going for a PhD, so her and I kind of had a love-hate relationship with it. I know some of the police officers here may know who I am. I got maybe a little too involved, and I learned an awful lot of stuff that my wife goes through that I don't normally see behind the scenes. The pain and anguish I got, I didn't understand the complete, utter disaster these people were living. Believe it or not, when I first got married, I lived in Lynn, Massachusetts, then moved to Lowell. All I needed was the third L from hell, which would have made me a master's degree in all of this business. I learned an awful lot. The reason I got involved, and it's somewhat known here with some of the folks that are in this room, is that all the way back in 1987, in my first year of my marriage with a child there, I ended up with the same similar house right across the street from me. And I was still in the military, and I could not believe what I was seeing, and I could not believe the age of the people going in and out of the house. So I ended up talking to a local detective who was on the watch, and he started teaching me some of the ropes. And it was a good thing, and it was a bad thing, because I found it intriguing enough that maybe I should have gone into law enforcement. I really thought there was a great way of being able to try to stop this thing. So he got me involved, whereas I got really involved to the point where the DEA got me involved. And we ended up closing that house down, and then I was used a couple more times. Well then, from that point, I moved to West Chicago, and literally the same scenario played out again in my own apartment building when I was there. I was working for a company. And I got to start seeing the patterns that went with the addictions. And it's a tragedy that when I hear these folks speak, I get it, but I don't get it. And it's a love-hate relationship with a lot of the addicts, because as I was hearing you speak with the meth, what I've seen in just the 2.5 years the house was closed down on Spring Street, thank God, is the brazen scariness of the change in the drug. I've had people now up on my deck staring in my windows, and this house has been closed. We have 2 more up the street, and I know we pretty much know what's going on up that way. But I'm glad I didn't know what to expect coming in here this evening. As I was talking about this, working with the police business, I moved to Lowell, okay? And I had the same situation, literally next door again. And at that time, it was the big crack thing going on. And that was really bizarre, crazy business and behaviors, and all night and day. And when I moved up here, I kind of moved up here to get away from it. And I think the underlying thing is, I'm coming here this evening, is that there really is no getting away with it. God bless the drug dealers and the manufacturers, because they've done a wonderful job exploiting the whole country. It's absolutely devastated our country. Look at this town, a manufacturing town, which is the businesses I'm in. I'm in the machinery, semiconductor and machinery business. And it's bad enough we have the international competition, which isn't fair enough. But we have those same players sending this stuff over here. Mexico, China, both of them have undercut us in the manufacturing world, but they've overcut us by ruining our youth. And I can't say enough that I remember this recovery center opening, and I thought, God, this is great. My wife thought so, and then it closed as quick as it opened up. And short term is not going to work in this community or anywhere else. This is a long-term problem, and as long as there's money involved in it, and vulnerable youth especially, which is what I'm seeing up on the Spring Street area yet again, we're going to have the problems. And I can't underestimate the amount of people that I see here getting involved. It's the only way it's going to work. It really is, and it has to come with the police, with the recovery centers, with the hospital. There's no other way. There's no one's going to be talked out of it in a simple term. I experienced it enough with my brother. He turned our whole life upside down for years. Took him to go to jail, and the man has not had a drink in 38 years. But what a disaster he turned our family into. And I see the same thing with all the people that are. When I came here this evening, my dinner on my deck, I had 5 different people either asking for money, swearing, and whatever, going up to these houses, and I'm saying, this just isn't going to end unless there's this complete and utter involvement of the whole scenario and a change in concept of the mindset within the community and then beyond, as we know, because it's everywhere. So, I mean, I'll throw in a word. My wife's looking for a job. She's a BSNRN in behavioral health and drug addiction. She lives right here in town, so if either she's looking for a job as of this week. She doesn't want to work. She was commuting all the way to Worcester and doing doubles and staying at my friend's condo, and she burnt out. But yeah, she's available if anyone's interested in that kind of applicant. But no, I mean, thanks to these guys up here, I worked enough around some of you kind of folks to, no one realizes what these guys go in and out of every day. The destruction of the families, it's got to be disheartening, and just really to the point when you go home, I can't even imagine it. Do I get frustrated with the police? I do. I've expressed it. You know that, Chief? I got burnt out as much as you guys do, seeing it over, and it's how do you stop it? How do you stop it? And I think it's, you can arrest them as much as you want, the court's gonna send them back out with the type of laws we have right now. You've gotta get them to believe that they can live a different life, and the only way is gonna be is you guys. So I really hope you come entrenched here for the long term, and I suspect that maybe this just might work finally. So the best to everyone.
Thank you, and I think that frustration is, you know, what brings us here. Like, we know police are frustrated, but how do we break that cycle? And it's getting these resources here. This is one of the most important things, is to have that here. So, Eric wants to speak.
I just want to, one thing that we didn't, that we did have another speaker here tonight. So I don't know if some of you have heard, you mentioned the youth. So one of the things that's part of this COSUP grant that I didn't mention, so Berlin PD was awarded a little over $300,000 for this grant. It's a 3-year grant. We're like a year and a half into it. And so there's been a lot of things going on in the background. We are going to file for a no-cost extension to extend it out into late 2025 as well. But one of the things that is partnering as far as this goes is the ACERT program. Stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences Response Team. So Manchester PD was one of the ones that started it with Amoskeag Health. They did a presentation for us in 2018 up in Laconia. What we did, kind of what we do in Laconia, is that we take that and we model it to our own. And so the model that we use in Laconia is actually something that now is utilized in almost all of the Lakes region, as well as probably about 8 or 10, maybe 15 communities around the state. And so that is actually embedded into this grant. So now, just real quick about what the ACERT program is. It is geared towards children, all right? So the Family Resource Center is going to be heavily involved in this aspect of it. Now, what's going to happen is that law enforcement is going to be trained, the first responders, as mostly law enforcement, it's going to be trained to, when you go to a call and there is a child present and or you suspect a child is present, you are going to talk to the family about the ACERT program. Then that program is going to utilize a referral system, whereas it's going to trigger this referral, and it comes directly from law enforcement. Now, the way it works in Laconia is the pet officer is the one that actually works with our ACERT coordinator down at the Family Resource Center in Laconia. It is a program that I will say you are going to probably hear about it if you haven't already. There's gonna, and I can say this. So Senator Shaheen is actually putting forth some, and you might have already heard it. I could actually read the language, but I'm not gonna go that far. But so basically what it is she's presenting some legislation to the feds, where hopefully it will become a national program. And so with that, when you say this is the long haul, this will be the long haul. Not only, as far as, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but the AG's office also plans on re-upping this COSUP grant for another 3 years as well. So this will go on. And if it doesn't get re-upped, the whole purpose of this is for me to step back and for Berlin PD to step up and fill in the work that we're going to be doing, right? It's going to be a staple at your PD. It's going to be a staple in your community. So there's going to be that connection. I will tell you, the officer that's going to be involved is going to be recovery coach trained, if not a full-blown CRSW. I can tell you what it takes to start a recovery center because we started navigating recovery of the Lakes region in a church basement with 4 people. 2 of them were in long-term recovery. All right. And now Cheryl can tell you, I don't know if she left. She left. So I can tell you, we have a very amazing operation going on down there. We started down on Main Street in Laconia in a very small area, right? And we now have about a 2,500 square foot building that, yeah. So Eric can tell you that has an amazing staff, and it's embedded in every aspect of Laconia. There probably isn't many people in Laconia that don't know about the Recovery Center. And so, you know, when Jamie and some of these other people talk about probably attracting people, right? Sometimes that can be looked at in a negative light. The difference is, no matter where you're from, if you're seeking help, you're seeking help, right? That's the thing. And I'm going to tell you that if there was someone from a different area of Laconia that came to Laconia and got into recovery and became a contributing member of our community, hell yeah. Right? That's what you want. You want that. So just know that we are in it for the long haul, right? And there is going to be an addition to this program that's going to be geared towards children. Okay? So it's all coming down the pipe.
Questions, and I'm just taking knowledge from my wife. I noticed a detox in Bethlehem.
Yep.
I mean, that is the major transition that these people have to go to first before they go into these transitional centers. Is there going to be anything besides the one in Bethlehem established? One of these hospitals either here or in Lancaster or Littleton, or am I missing something? There already is one, because I only know of Bethlehem, and with the population as bad as it is in this situation currently, I don't think Bethlehem can handle the type of numbers that we're talking about if they do want to enter into a program that they're going to have to detoxify before they can get distributed out to a program center that's going to then help guide them into a better way of life. But ultimately, from what I gather from Joanne, and she's 30 years instituted into this business, is that it starts there, but where does that start there area begin? So many are so far away. I've known people in this town that have claimed they're homeless down in Massachusetts to get into places. So there must be a situation that there's just not enough of the actual detox from alcohol and or opioid type of drugs first, and then they get transitioned into these type of environments. Am I wrong, or is that the only place that I know of in Bethlehem?
You know, if you really want the bottom truth, like, yes, you might have to travel. If you have good insurance, you're probably gonna get same-day treatment. But if you're on state insurance, especially if it's alcohol, you're looking at a 7-day wait.
That'll kill an alcoholic.
Yes, we do need more. Yes, could I see it in a long goal plan? But it would be foolish for me to say that that was even realistic for me to talk about.
So Bethlehem is the only treatment center in that direction right this minute then?
Plus you got Green Mountain, if you have good insurance.
Well, Green Mountain, that's.
Right?
Yeah.
But yes.
But here's the thing, right? So the reality of it is, yes, right? It's few and far between.
Yes. There's more than there ever was.
But there is more than there ever was, right? And this community is a hell of a lot more ready to lower the recidivism rate, right, of overdoses or alcoholics, binging, all of it, right, than it's ever been. Because I can tell you, I know personally what it was like in 2007, 2006, 2005. Like, I know, right? So I was one of those guys that looked homeless walking down the street. So I know, right? You be quiet. But the reality is we're a lot more ready, right? And I can tell you that the chief has that mindset like not many chiefs do in this state. It's amazing. He has that same mindset as my chief. All right. So part of what the police department's role in that pet role is going to be is what I did. All right. Which is when you convince them to go to treatment and you get that program going for them and you help support them, walk their hand through it, not only are you doing that, but part of that is making sure that they're signing releases so that way when their case managers are working with them in their treatment programs, you can connect with them. So I always knew that when someone was coming out, what their aftercare plan was, so I could find ways to support them before they even got out, right? And I also knew that if they absconded, right? If they took off. So there's gonna be things that the police department's gonna do that most of you aren't even gonna know that they're doing, right? Because it's just a whole new way of working with individuals that struggle with substance use and mental health, right? It's just something that this PD is definitely ready for. So I just leave you with that. Okay? Anybody?
I was just gonna say, just to follow up that, that's part of what I think the recovery center is gonna help facilitate along with what you guys are doing is that, 7-day wait where people do have to wait, which this seemingly long time, that could be life-changing for them is to have services like the recovery center so that they have that continuous everyday support and services like MAT in the meantime if that's something that they're looking for until they can get into that residential piece. So that, again, Jamie,
it's huge.
Recovery center.
It is huge. And by training the officers that are out on the street, right, when Jamie or Eric said 9 to 5, right? My officers that were working from 5 p.m. till 9 a.m., right? Those are the ones that were reaching out to me and being like, hey, I'm with so-and-so. Like, what do I do? So it's really helping to train those officers of what that looks like after hours. So, and also there's ways that we can build on that resource base as well. So it's just a matter of time of getting those types of resources. And if you get enough volunteers, right, and you build it up enough, I mean, Laconia, Navigating Recovery, 24 hours on call. Like, and we have a response time of between 15 minutes and 30 minutes. And that's, so, I mean, there's possibilities here, right? It's just a matter of what we can work together and come together to do.
Those that know me as well, even though it's not technically in my job description, this thing never stops going off, I can assure you. And I respond all the time. Emily, my wife, doesn't like it very much sometimes, but, we will do what it takes, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just a start, right? I mean, when I was starting my job and I saw Keith Anderson come over from the Friendship House and say, do you think a recovery home will work here? There was no recovery home. He's got 8 now. When he started, I said, if you communicate with the PD, if you let everybody know what you're doing, let the town know, let everybody know, then it can work. And it did. So this is a start.
I'd just like to acknowledge and thank our state reps for being here and sharing enough.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And NHPR is here, and thank Chad Fillion and Flu Media for recording this also. And this will be public, almost like a public document. So, thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. Thanks again, Chief Hugo, for having everybody. Get home safe. Thank you all.